Remember Signalgate, when Pete Hegseth and other government officials accidentally texted a reporter about military strikes in Yemen? More than a year later, there are renewed concerns about how another cabinet official, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, is using the encrypted app or has used it. Missy Ryan at The Atlantic reports the State Department told a court last year that Rubio didn't use disappearing messages, but it could not make that same commitment a few months later. Joining us, staff writer at The Atlantic, Missy Ryan. Missy, really good to have you. Flesh out your reporting for us.
So our reporting from my colleagues at The Atlantic and I, and in addition to the court documents that you referenced, showed that despite the attestations that the State Department had made in a FOIA lawsuit, that Secretary Rubio continued to use the disappearing message function on Signal last year, and that it was something that, the State Department is now saying was permissible because they also had installed new technology that captures the messages of Secretary Rubio and other senior officials at the State Department who have some of this technology. And really, it goes to show the complexity of the tension between the ease of technology and the requirements that the government has to keep information safe, and also comply with federal records requirements in a day and age and an administration which really loves to keep things informal and has a lot of outside personnel who play a significant role in key government decisions. And I think that's one of the big takeaways from our reporting, that even though Marco Rubio and other government officials were warned by Trump last year after Signalgate that it's probably best to use Signal, that they continue to do so. They say in compliance with federal records laws, but they do it because it's fast, it's easy, and this is an administration that likes to keep things loose in some ways.
Why is it important to comply with federal records laws?
Because it's important to know what federal officials, government officials, get up to in the nation's business, on taxpayer dollars, and that is something that government officials have to comply with. That means that those records can be subject to FOIA requests, with some exceptions to court requests, and it's been a really important accountability mechanism that the United States has had for many, many years. And, I think it is important to say that the State Department says that they're complying with this because of this new technology that they have to collect records on Signal, even if they are deleted. But, that Secretary Rubio continues to use this function, or has continued in the past to use this function, even after the State Department said that he did not.
Okay, so here's where I'm just kind of losing the plot in the way that they're explaining it for themselves. Yeah. So they have Leap Expert on their phones. It's another app that allows them to archive all of their messages, their Signal messages. Why would Marco Rubio need to delete his Signal messages off Signal, but then have them archived by Leap? And if the answer is he doesn't think they should remain on Signal, maybe there's a security issue, that's kind of what's implied here. Why have it double up? Why are you using Signal in the first place?
Well, it's a great question. To your first question, we don't know exactly why Rubio used this disappearing messages function in a chat with other senior government officials. We did not get an answer to that question. We know that he did after the State Department, as you mentioned in your intro, testified to a court that he did not use that function. Later, the following spring, it changed the way it talked. The State Department talked about it and said, made no mention of that. But what it really does raise a very good question, which is, why can't the government figure out its own, maybe classified way of messaging? And I've talked to a number of different former government officials about this, and they say, while there are some there are government cell phones that people get. There are even some government cell phones that have the ability to do, review of classified emails, even some sort of secure video calls, but they don't have the same kind of messaging platform that Signal has. And it's really just an ease of communication thing. And I think a feature of the way that this government does business, this administration does miss, which is, for example, you have somebody like Jared Kushner or Steve Witkoff, or, you know, for the State Department, somebody like Mauricio Claver-Carrón, who are outside people. Some of them are special government employees, some of them are not, and they're communicating with key government decision makers. And so that makes an app like Signal relatively more important because it, you know, straddles the divide between government and non-government people, but they rely on it more because of that kind of hybrid way of doing business.
Yeah, it seems crazy that they can't develop their own version of it or get a hardened version of Signal at the very least. And this is why Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska, and you reported this in your story, he's a Republican of Nebraska. He said that his Signal was hacked. Russia hacked my Signal after an apparent phishing attempt by a foreign government. So he says it's not secure. Misty Ryan, I got to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.